Hello there, and welcome back to the London Food Network podcast. I'm Sebastian Candelon, your host, and this show is proudly sponsored by Embrace AI Consultancy, where we help food, drink, and hospitality businesses scale smarter with strategy and automation. Today, I'm really excited to be talking to David Wright from Wright's Flour. Good morning, David. How are you?
Good, thank you, Seb. Yeah, really good. Looking forward to the podcast.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to speaking to you. It's not often you talk to business owners that have, was it no, it's more than 4 generations, surely.
Six
Generations.
yeah.
6 generations. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah.
I'd love to know what percentage of actual businesses exist these days that are, because when was it established? In the 1800s, I guess, right?
67. Well, they say rag to riches in 3 generations, I think, don't they? But we've managed to keep going for another 3 or beyond that.
Impressive. And I bet you the percentage of businesses that have been established that long is probably less than 1% for sure.
Will you be surprised, I think? I mean, there's an organisation called Family Business Association of the UK.
Okay.
And there are quite a few, actually. You'd be surprised that go on. But it is difficult to keep a family business going for that length of time. You've got to have that sort of perseverance and luck, mainly, I suppose. And I think I always kind of consider myself as custodian of the business rather than business owner. And I think for businesses to last that sort of length of time, it's about reinvesting and putting money back in rather than taking it out.
And presumably also obviously adapting, right? Because I'm sure the playing field back then was significantly different to what it is now. And you were saying you've built a new milling plant, right? In Harlow. Is it Harlow?
Yeah. We built that about 3 years ago, completed it, and brand new site. So it was a brownfield site, and we built the new mill there. Still got the old mill in Enfield, which has been a mill there since 1087. So, we've got a bit of history on that site.
When? 1087?
Yeah. So we were in the Doomsday Book as a flour mill at that time.
1087? As in 1,000 years?
1,000 years, yeah.
That's insane.
I think the oldest building on the site there is now about 1650. I live on that site in a house that's sort of Georgian 1725. So yeah, we've got a fair story to tell in terms of the history of flour milling in Enfield.
Is it still running? Is it still operational?
Yeah, we do specialty flours there and smaller volumes, really. It's when we moved to Harlow, we moved all the production out of Ponders End into the new facility here. And of course, we built this mill here. Well, I'm sitting in the middle of the office here in Harlow through COVID. So that was fun. We had 150 contractors on site, different contractors, building this mill.
Well, all keeping the 1 meter or 2 meter distance.
Well, no, they went into lockdown and we lost them all pretty much. Wow. But, contractors tend to not spend much time at home. They're out working on site all through the year. So they all went home to their wives and kids, got locked down, and after a few weeks they went, sod this, I'm going back to work. And so they came back, and it did slow the whole project up by about 6 months, and put a bit more costs onto it. Well, quite a lot more costs onto it. But I can say that it was a pretty painful 3 years building this mill, but it was worth it in the end. It's absolutely state-of-the-art, beautiful mill now.
Nice. And what was the objective of building the mill? Just the old one wasn't up to the capacity you're trying to fulfill? You were trying to increase your capacity?
Well, there was a couple of things, really. First of all, we were full. We had 2 milling plants on that site, and we were full up, really. If we wanted to grow the business anymore, I looked and thought, well, where are we going to build this 3rd mill on this site? And you could put it there or put it there, but the operational flow wasn't great. And the thing about having a mill that's has been there 1,000 years is it is not always the perfect layout, because you've got to build on the places where you've got gaps rather than where you'd really want to put it. Plus we've got listed buildings, the old mill, the old barn, the offices, all listed. You can't knock them down. It wasn't ideal. And the warehouse, the old mill, was wooden frame building, not ideal for very modern production. And so that was the thought, well, rather than spend a fair amount of money building a third mill, let's spend a bit more, do it right. Because when you're a family operation that's been going 6 generations, you think always of the long term. Corporate businesses are always looking at the next 5 years. We tend to look at the next, 50 years, and that's a key thing for us. So that was
makes sense, and I guess it increased your capacity, and it probably increased your margins as well, right? Because I'm sure that a more state-of-the-art facility kind of makes the whole process much less labor-intensive and time-consuming.
Yeah, we'd be amazed at, I think we can produce flour quite efficiently. But in this day and age, compared to when I first came into the business, the things that you've got to sort of bolt on, technical, health and safety, HR, these are growing areas of the business that in a modern environment, kind of got to have. But that's the way of life, business life.
So what you're saying is for every kind of pair of hands you've saved production-wise, you've had to put onto the quality assurance.
It is a bit like that. And of course, every ton you make, you've got to have a driver to deliver it. And, so there are increases, and we've increased the output since we've been here, and think that having a very modern, well invested production unit does create interest with some of the bigger buyers that you might not necessarily have had before.
Okay, because they look at you more seriously, I guess. They treat you more seriously because
They do. And I think, particularly with the bigger companies, food safety is absolutely the number one priority. They've got expensive, valuable brands they want to protect. And so having supplies from a very modern factory is pretty important.
Interesting. Tell me a bit about how you got into it. I mean, I know it's a family business, but did everybody in your family follow suit? What was the kind of transition with that? And if you had siblings, then was there much kind of rivalry as to who was going to one day run it, or was it quite clear from the start who was gonna or not? How does that work?
Well, I think, why did I get involved with it? I got involved with it at a very early age, because living next to the mill, it's like a farm and a farmhouse. We had a mill and a mill house, and the mill, traditionally the miller had a house next door to the mill, and he looked after the mill. So we were brought up in the mill house next to the mill, and with that came, kind of a familiarity of the mill. In those days, you could wander into the mill, as a child, and it was a bit of a play area in a way. My father would not be very happy if he knew what we were up to, but obviously you can't do that anymore. I think from the age of I don't know, I would have thought about 10 or 11, I was working in the mill. Wow. Bit of child labor never hurt anybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that every school holiday I worked cleaning, delivering flour.
Because you wanted to, and because you were earning the money and it felt good, or because you were forced to?
No, it certainly wasn't forced to. But I didn't mind the work. I've always been quite hardworking, but I particularly wanted the money, and I think that was it. My first salary wage was 50p an hour. I remember that, and then it not. A little while later, it got up to £1 an hour. So, I could earn £40 a week as a sort of teenager. Well, that's quite good.
Yeah, absolutely. That's more than I made back then.
Yeah, it was great. So it became really part of my life. So when I got near to the end of school, I had no other thought in my head what I would be doing. I would become a flour miller, and having 4 generations before me, it was kind of, I always valued that legacy or the historical links very much. And so I then went on and worked for a couple of other flour millers, went to milling school in Switzerland.
Yeah, you mentioned that. That's awesome. That sounds like a holiday.
Well, it wasn't a holiday. It was pretty intense for 12 months. And there was never a time where we weren't doing some sort of exam, a practical exam or written exam. And the Swiss were very, very keen to maintain the standard. So if you didn't get 75% average all the way through, you were out, and that was it. So, the fear of not passing this exam made us all basically work our nuts off so that we were not going to be sent home in shame to our family businesses or our businesses. And it was great. We had about 27 people in the class from something like 20 different countries around the world. So it was
nice.
It was good fun. And we all came from a milling background. So we were all there because we were interested in the trade and the skill of running flour mills and, and running the equipment. So that was a really good part of the training. And then I did some commissioning with some engineering companies, commissioning new flour mills, which was a great thing. And then I went really back to the family business and started at a sort of low-level management position, kept going. And I'm 40 odd years later, I'm still here.
How did that work then? Because I always think with family businesses, like, a massive challenge must be also how you manage the kind of bringing in the next generation without kind of pissing off other staff that might look at it as, oh, well, he's only getting promoted because, he's in the family, right? But it sounds in your case like you kind of had to earn your place and you certainly had to work for it, right?
Well, I always wanted to, and I was conscious of that fact in a way, and I didn't want anyone to think that I had got an easy life. So there were, even as a kid, if there were any really tough jobs, I was there in the forefront of it. And I don't think anybody thought that. And I've never, ever felt that feeling from any of the people that work in the business. I think I always felt genuine pride in that this is how I felt, and they were working for a business that had longevity and that wouldn't be here today, gone tomorrow, and wouldn't be sold on to the next company or whatever. There was some consistency there, and I think most people here appreciate that. They appreciate that.
What's going to happen in the future so you got your son, I think, similar kind of.
Yeah, James has been with us now 10 or 15 years, and he's works in the company. He's really followed the same sort of steps that I have. His background is really technical milling, and now he's working in the commercial area, dealing with customers and buying wheat and selling flour and bran and wheat feed and that sort of thing. So he's very much on the business side of things, which you've got to be if you're going to end up running the company.
Absolutely. And so, just for the listeners, really, like, tell me a bit more about what it is that you actually produce. You told me you have something like 300 SKUs or something, wasn't it?
I think it's more. It's about 500 SKUs.
500
but
SKUs.
I think most people come here. We have a lot of farmers' visits here, and they're always sort of feel very surprised at the complication of the business.
Well, you wouldn't. I mean, for me, it doesn't seem that complicated. And when you say you go and study for 12 months, you think, really? What do you study? But of course, I run a seafood business. It's the same with me. People will say, well, how difficult can it be to fillet a fish and run a business selling fish? But of course, it has huge complexities and nuances all over the place. So, it takes time to build that knowledge. Back to your product. So 500 SKUs. That's
it's not 500 different flours, but there's probably 100 different flours and different pack sizes and that sort of thing. So, we make mainly bread flours. So you can make bread flours from all UK wheat to all we buy Canadian wheat as well, which is very more expensive, but very high protein, high glutinous wheat that we can either mill as a Canadian type flour, or we blend with that with UK wheat. Most of the flours that we make are all locally grown UK class one. We call them class ones, which are bread wheats, different blends all the way from in between. Protein is quite an important part of what bakers and users would want to see in their flour. So
That's
that it
interesting you
might,
say that, because protein is a very big topic. And actually, do you know, I never associate flour or any flour-derived products with protein. I just
yeah.
think carb. I never actually think protein content at all. So
Yeah. Well,
what is that?
protein is there more for functionality rather than nutritional. So higher proteins tend to make better quality breads. When you're making bread, the analogy I always use is there's two things going on in a loaf of bread when you make it. There is gas retention, so you need to be able to hold the gas as it's fermenting, and there's gas production. So you need this during fermentation, this gas production, and you have to get that balance right. And there's lots of things you can do in a mill to try and make that happen. But it's a bit like, I use the analogy of blowing up a balloon. So if the gas retention, the gluten is too tough, you can't blow this balloon up. It's whatever you put in there, it's not blowing up. But you do have to, so you want the gluten to be elastic and hold the gas, but you don't want it to be weak so it
Yeah,
breaks and
yeah, yeah.
bursts, and you don't want it too tough that you can't actually blow it up. So that balance is really important.
Interesting.
So protein is the gas retention bit in a loaf of bread, and then you've got to have the gas production, which comes from fermentation, starch damage. It opens up the starch in there, so that the enzymes can eat away at that and create the fermentation. So how hard you grind, what wheats you use, is all really vital in producing a good loaf of bread. We all take bread as a bit for
Yeah,
granted, don't we?
yeah. I was
Oh,
just
you just
thinking
buy it in the
exactly that when you just
supermarket,
changed
eat
my
it.
mind
But
there. Yeah.
there's a huge amount of technology behind it, and the supply chain is incredible. Really, it's from wheat arriving here to bread being consumed by the consumer is really only a few days away. So we've got to keep that moving all the time.
I know this is quite a big product. The space you need, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, is significant as well, I imagine, because am I right in thinking the weeds will come in and you've obviously got to prepare it? I mean, how much wastage is there? So from, let's say, a ton of wheat in, how much is actually produced as usable flour?
Well, you got to remember wheat's grown in a field, so we've got to clean that. There would be other things in that wheat potentially that's come off that field, stones, other cereals. So the first thing we do, we take it in very quickly. We're offloading a lorry in really minutes so that we can get a good turnaround of vehicles. It goes through a pre-cleaning process, which will take out all those large dust, that sort of thing, large contaminants. And the real trick of milling is, to start with, is the blending. So because wheat will vary in quality even within the field, from field to field, from farm to farm, region to region, our what we need to do is be able to even that out so we have a more consistent product. Because when a baker or an end user gets their product, they want to be able to know that they put the same amount of water in, or they don't want to have to keep adjusting their inputs according to the flour quality. So consistency is absolutely key. So blending, then we clean it again more thoroughly, to get out really very small contaminants. And then we do a thing called conditioning, where we add water to the grain. Again, grain coming in is having various different levels of moisture content, and particularly in a wet summer harvest, that's going to vary from area to area. So we bring that moisture content up so it's a more consistent level. So it's better for the mill, there's more reliable milling, but it's also
Interesting.
important for the flour moisture needs to be consistent.
You're ensuring that the flour is at a certain moisture level,
Yeah,
basically,
it
in
needs to
order to.
be, not too high, not too low. So, because it affects the quality of the flour in a lot of other places. So
Blimey, so I can
Essentially,
see why you needed 12 months in Switzerland.
you need to have tough brands so that when it goes to the mill, it doesn't all splinter. It makes it more difficult to separate. And you need mellow starch in the middle so that it's easier to grind and get to a more consistent starch damage and water absorption. Yeah, so that's milling in a nutshell.
It sounds quite well. I'm sure it's even more complicated to put it into action, especially at scale, right? And like you say, the consistency is the key because, especially with the manufacturers you're probably dealing with, they go through big volumes and they have to make a consistent product because the end consumer, especially the British public, seem to just they're the creatures of habit, and if something changes, then
Absolutely, consistency. Well, I think in all food companies and businesses, it's the same, isn't it? They want to be able to know that um, each time they buy it, it's a similar product.
I think it's the brand
Absolutely,
consistency, I guess, as well, isn't it? It's what you go to a particular brand for,
it is.
to
Yeah, yeah,
expect
yeah,
that. So people go to McDonald's and they expect to get a meal within, 30 seconds, and if you don't, then you
yeah. And they expect the Big Mac to be the same in Singapore as it is
oh yeah,
in London,
exactly.
as it is in New York or everywhere.
Yeah.
So having that consistency is absolutely a key, I think.
Well, I guess talking about the kind of people you're supplying. So you say you supply obviously mostly a B2B, so other businesses, bakeries, manufacturers, and you also package for retail some of your flour as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So we've got a big variety of different customers for sure. From the small craft artisan bakeries, and that's always been a big part of what we do. Traditionally, going back 50 or 100 years, it was the small bakers in North London. As they've sort of dwindled in number, we've had to sort of go further afield over the years, and now we're dealing with bigger companies as well. But the demands and needs of the small baker is pretty similar to the large baker. They want that quality and consistency in the same way that the big bakeries have. So yeah, we're doing big national companies, but also the small bakers. We supply pre-packed flours into food service, into the retail. We deal with all the major retailers, and we also make mixes. So we've got a business that takes our flour and mixes it with other ingredients, like seeds and other grains to make mixes that can be made that you can use for bread making, cakes, donut. We do a lot of donut mix for quite some very large donut manufacturers, but also into the small craft bakers as well.
wow. I mean, I guess most people at one point, knowingly or not, have probably eaten your flour, right?
Well, maybe, yeah. I mean, I don't think we're doing milling at some scale, but we're certainly not big in terms of the national supply.
Yeah.
Um, there's some very large industrial millers that are more national than us, and there's probably about a dozen now of any size. Where go back to when our family first started in the 1860s, there would literally have been thousands of mills.
Wow.
Mills, you'd have a mill in every town, every
Yeah,
village,
yeah,
like the
right.
baker.
Hmm.
Those numbers have reduced dramatically. So from about 2,000 mills when we started, there's probably a dozen
Wow.
commercially sized businesses, excluding the sort of small water mills and windmills and that sort of thing. So it's very much condensed into a pretty efficient industry now, I think.
And what's your kind of plans? I mean, I guess it varies from generation to generation, but I guess you're going to get to a point soon of kind of thinking about legacy and what you're leaving behind, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, what is that? What does that look like? What does the future look like? What is it you're going to be looking to kind of pass down?
Well, probably getting into the twilight zone of my career, to be honest, but I'll keep going as long as I can, as long as I can. But I think that we built this really super facility in Harlow, something to be really proud of. And I think that will take us through really for another 30, 40 years, I would have thought. And we've got the mixing facility in Enfield. We've got the specialty mill in Enfield. And I think that it's really continuing to do more of the same. potentially. And as long as we're looking after our customers, and customer services, you'd expect me to say that, but it really is key that we look after them very, very carefully. And so they want to deal with us. And that's how we've grown, I think, having good relationships with the people that are buying from us and keeping that going. I think that's what James's next task is when he takes the baton.
And what challenges, like, well, let's go back. I mean, in your stint, if you like, within the family business, what's been the most challenging part, or think of something that's happened in the past that's really kind of knocked you back, and you kind of question your life choices, and what
Well,
was it, and how did you
I
get
mean,
through it?
look, in business, nothing is easy anymore, is it? I think. I used to hear about my grandfather going off to play golf with the mill foreman in the afternoons in the sort of 1950s. The demands on business now, it's just so great, aren't they?
Yeah.
Coming from every angle, whether it's, technical, HR, health and safety, food quality. I think generally with milling, you're trying to take a raw material that is variable and making it into a product that is consistent. That's always tricky. And, having a new mill definitely has made things, the terms of production, a bit more straightforward because we've got technology. And I always say, actually, my great grandfather came back and he walked into the mill in Harlow, he would still know what's going on. He'd say,
Yeah.
yeah, that's first break, wheat's going in there, going into the purification, it's being sifted there, into the reduction process. He would know that because the principles of milling have not really changed very much. But obviously the technology is light years away from, and he wouldn't have a clue what the hell was going on
Really?
there. But so, there's the challenges are huge. Raw material
Mm.
procurement. You've Putin
Mm.
invades Ukraine, wheat prices go up
Yeah.
by 50%, and you've got to manage this and still be able to make some sort of living from selling flour with a very volatile wheat market.
Well, especially when people have always traditionally expected bread and these things to obviously be at a certain price point. I mean, I must admit, I know we sell bread in our shop in Sussex, and the prices have doubled easily since I started buying bread from the bakery there.
But bread gets a tough time, doesn't it? When you think about, I don't know, look at the price of beer compared to the price of bread. If you go back 50 years, they were pretty similar. Well, yeah, okay. If you went to buy a large sourdough, you'd be paying maybe £5 a loaf. But that's kind of,
Well, I was premium. I
that's
used
a
to sell for
very
less than a
premium loaf.
fiver for sure. I think we were selling a sourdough loaf for about £4 about 12 years ago. I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
I don't think it was
sourdough,
that.
that artisan bread is kind of different. You can go into a supermarket and the cheapest on display is still well below £1,
Mm.
which I would say, for a large loaf, is a very good value. But of course, they always look at bread and milk, and that's the staples that everyone
Yeah, that's how we
looks at.
compare, isn't it? That's how we judge even a retailer is by the price of these kind of basics.
Yeah,
They kind of,
yeah,
and that's why the prices they try and drill the price down so much.
yeah,
Which, yeah, but I mean, seafood's the same in the sense that seafood's gone up incredibly uh, over the years, especially in recent years, and that's the thing. We want more sustainable things. We want this. We want that. At the end of the day, these things cost money, and the cost of production has gone up incredibly. And
yeah,
the thing that's kind of allowed me to to get to a point in business where we're still profitable without having to put the price up too much is just adoption of, well, in your case, technology within the mills. In my case, actually, technology within, production, admin, the whole kind of back end, if you like, of the business is trying to apply as much modern technology as possible. Like AI, for example, has been a
yeah,
great tool set for me and my business to,
sure,
increase your capacity without increasing your headcount. Really, is the what I've seen the value anyway in adopting technology and kind of navigating through all these kind of price increases left, right, and center. So Yeah,
Absolutely.
I try and advise all businesses to do the same. Just look at that side of things now, because your competition certainly is going to be looking at all these kind of adoptions, and you've got to try and stay ahead, because that is the world we're living in now, where AI will replace and become a lot better than we are at a lot of tasks. And so it's a funny time we live in, really, where we're
Well,
in this kind
it's
of big shift.
I think it's exciting in that respect because I always think to actually make a ton of flour from the very beginning, the mill is quite big. It's very automated. It doesn't take a lot of cost to put. Well, it does. I mean, there's energy but the people side of things start to increase further down the business. So you want to put a flour into a bag and then put it
Yeah,
onto a lorry and then
yeah,
deliver it. And you've got
yeah,
salesmen and you've got admin people making
yeah,
sure that everything is, cross-checked and
yeah,
technical
absolutely.
people
Yeah.
testing the flour and if is it right. That's where the costs
And like I
start to
said, then you
mount
got
up.
marketing, you got the HR side of things, you got.
Absolutely. Yeah. So and I think if AI can help with that, then that's got to be quite an exciting thing to go for.
Oh, it
Yeah.
is. I think for me, I really enjoy that side of things. That's what I kind of concentrated a lot in the last 3 years. We had to. We were in a bad situation about 2.5, 3 years ago. We were in a lot of debt coming out of COVID. We really struggled a
Yeah.
lot. We lost a lot of businesses that went under. And there was a point of I had to make a decision. What do I do? So I had to unfortunately get rid of a lot of the people that we had, because we needed to survive. And I never replaced most of them, because I just adopted a lot of technology that, AI, technology, automation systems. I just spent a lot of time and energy on creating something that would sustain us and get us through this kind of like rough patch. And I'm glad I did, because I've learned a lot from that process. And well, I don't know if I told you, but I started the consultancy off the back of it.
Yeah.
And, that's been a really nice, for me, process to learn the hard way how beneficial it can be to actually put the time in to learn about all the modern day luxuries, really, that we're presented with these days, because never has there been a time where you can get something that's not human or a machine, a physical machine, to make better decisions sometimes as well, and to streamline processes that are very tedious and very difficult to recruit for, because, no one likes to do boring admin jobs.
Yeah.
And if you can automate that, then everyone's a winner, really. Everybody can
Absolutely.
can actually concentrate more on the things they enjoy or the things they excel at, and all the
Yeah.
boring, tedious things. Well, let AI do that. It's
Absolutely.
absolutely
Yeah.
no brainer.
Yeah.
Nice. I mean, I think I'm out of questions, David. I think this has been quite an overload
Yeah.
of information. It's fascinating to learn about.
Well,
There's
you
no
asked
more
me
humble wheat.
about
You know.
the biggest challenge, I think. I think we're kind of known for our consumer products as well. So we make bread and cake mixes for the home baking market. And that really started off in the mid-90s. Flour was being retailed at 9 pence a pack, and that's at
Wow.
£60 a ton. Wheat was well over £100 a ton. So consumers were able to buy flour at below the price of wheat.
Why is that? How is that even possible?
Well, I mean, it was being sold it was a loss leader for the retailers, and of course, one retailer does it, and then they all have to follow because they don't want to be more expensive than each other. It was an absolutely ridiculous situation. We were being pounded. This is on 1.5 kilo retail packs all the time from the sick retailers, and it became a point of, well, do we actually want to continue that part of our business? And so this is how we kind of looked at developing bread mixes. So there was very little on the market as to what bread mixes were. We thought, well, put everything in the pack, including yeast, and all you have to do is add water. And it was about the time when bread machines were coming onto the market and being developed, and people were buying more and more bread machines. So we developed this range of bread mixes that got taken up by all the retailers. So that got us kind of
Nice.
into a consumer market that we hadn't really had much exposure with before. So it grew double digit every year for a very long period of time. Not a big part of what we do, I would say, as a percentage. It was, it was quite small, but it had brought good margin into the business and was really quite successful. And I'd say, that was when we were in a period where it was kind of, oh, really, do we want to do this? To a point where actually we kind of
We have to.
changed the focus of that part of the business.
Oh, but there's that kind of innovation that has brought 6 generations of
Yeah,
ownership in this business forward, isn't it? And that's the truth of it. You've gotta go with the times, and of course you got to stay true to your core and your values. But at the same time, you've got to be able to adapt quickly sometimes with
yeah,
the changing landscape, price, political situation, staffing. I mean, you name it. We've not talked about that, but that's another conversation, I'm sure, for you.
yeah,
And I think that's what sets, long established businesses apart, is the ones that are able to innovate still and are able to make changes according to where you're at. Well, let's talk about that a second, actually. I don't think we talked about, but what are your biggest challenges at the moment, let's say, on a day-to-day basis, to kind of bring you to the next stage of your plans for the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, the challenges probably are very similar to others, but energy prices, well, they're starting to settle down now. But I mean, we went through a period of time where our cost for electricity, we're very energy intensive here. We use a lot of power, as you can imagine, to grind wheat. It's very power hungry. That quadrupled the cost of that.
Wow.
And that was pretty tricky to kind of keep under control. We've kind of gradually got our hands around that little issue. And same with wheat. Your wheat price doubles, that's 60% of your cost. Pretty much overnight, when something happens like that, it can cause a problem. And if you don't act quickly, go out of business. It's as simple as that. So you've got to have a really close eye on the costs, and you've got to make sure that you're watching that and making sure that everything is back to back. So we have a lot of customers that would buy flour based on the wheat market. We go out and buy that wheat and fix it, so we have fixed prices in the same way that a lot of people have. COVID was an interesting time as well, because you remember everybody started baking bread from home and they wanted flour.
Yeah. Everything changed, didn't it?
So, the retail side of things went berserk. It was ridiculous. And the limiting factor in the end was that we couldn't get packaging quick enough in order to fulfill all the orders. And we had an internet shop and we still got an internet shop. It's tiny, really. But pre-COVID, we were sort of taking about, 10 orders a day. In the heat of, of COVID, when everybody wanted, it was 1,000 orders a day.
Wow.
And we couldn't do it. So in the end, we were saying, well, look, we're going to open the shop at 9. And when we've got, 100 orders, we'll stop. We'll shut the shop. So we were shutting the shop at 9:05. It was just insane.
That's incredible.
So then we kind of went, oh, look, okay, what we're going to do is, rather than buy flour in little packs of 1.5s or 500 grams, why don't you buy it in sacks of 16 kilograms, buy it in bulk? So we had this order online, pay for it online, and then come on a Saturday morning and pick it up. So they would drive in and show their proof of purchase, and then somebody would put it in the boot, so they didn't even have to get out. And they were literally queuing up down the street to get into the mill. And it's like, why can't this happen all the time?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it was the similar story to us, actually. We grew quite significantly throughout COVID. And then, like I say, just post-COVID, we'd set up this huge infrastructure to cater for the demand. And then, things took a turn. Like, everyone started going back to the restaurants, less on the retail side. Our online sales, of course, dropped. And the worst was actually some big retailers we used to supply that went under, and that left us in a real pickle, because I'm sure it's the same for you. The margins are so small in what we do that, when you do get these kind of big setbacks, it takes an enormous amount of time to recover from it. So, it was very challenging, very, very challenging post-COVID for us.
Yeah, I mean, like you, I guess, we still had quite a lot of business with, ended up in hospitality, which basically stopped, So it wasn't all win. There was a lot of losing as well. But overall, I think we were quite busy. The worry, I think, was making sure we had people able to come in to work and, produce
keep
product.
it going, keep the wheels turning.
But there's not many people in our workplace, and it's big buildings. So actually, I always used to say you're probably safer coming into work than
Right.
staying at home, because you could work without really getting at all close to anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, that's been a fascinating podcast. Really appreciate your time, David. I think, it's just great to go behind the scenes of something so simple in people's eyes, isn't it? Like the loaf of bread they're consuming at home, and kind of, I like to bring that story forward because we don't really think about what goes on behind the scenes and what sacrifices are being made, what challenges we have to overcome to get this food on the table, essentially, for people. I don't think people ever realize just what goes in it. I think people just think that this kind of stuff magically appears, and
And of
the
course, it's
stories
the whole
behind it.
supply chain as well. It's farmers, plant breeders,
Everything. It's
all the way
the
through.
equipment manufacturer. I mean, that's why the podcast I've broadened it now. So I want to talk to everyone, whether it's a packaging company, the machinery manufacturer, the logistics companies. It's all the same. It's all a
Yes.
grind. It's all an incredibly complicated and very challenging kind of industries to bring that food to the table, and I don't think people appreciate that enough, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Absolutely. But we're working on it.
one podcast at a time, David.
Exactly.
One grain at a time for you.
Well,
Nice.
thank you very much.
No, thank you, David. I really appreciate your time, and I think there's been a lot of value in what we've discussed, and hopefully we've brought a little bit more understanding to people about what does go on in the food industry, and whenever they buy that flour or that bread, they'll have a little bit more appreciation for it, hopefully, as well.
Thank you.
So I want to say as well, thank you to all listeners. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share it, and give it some love. We'll be back soon with more founders and leaders from around the world of food and hospitality. Thank you, David. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, have a good day.